June 19, 1944. Chidori Airfield, Iwo Jima. Lieutenant General Tadamaki Kurabayashi stepped off the transport plane onto the volcanic ash runway, instantly swallowed by oppressive heat. At 52 years old, this veteran officer carried orders personally authorized by Prime Minister Hideki Tojo, defend this 8-square-mile volcanic island to the last man. As Kurabayashi examined the desolate landscape stretching before him, with Mount Suribachi looming to the south and black sand coating everything, he realized with absolute certainty what this assignment signified. According to his wife Yoshi, he had told her upon receiving the orders that it was improbable even his ashes would return from Iwo Jima. The island of Iwo Jima, positioned roughly 750 miles south of Tokyo, occupied a vital strategic location between newly seized American bases in the Marana Islands and the Japanese mainland. Its 3 airfields enabled Japanese fighter aircraft to intercept American B-29 Superfortress bombers traveling north to strike Japan's cities. If the Americans captured Iwo Jima, they would erase this early warning capability, gain emergency landing sites for crippled bombers, and establish bases for P-51 Mustang fighters to escort bombing missions all the way to Tokyo. What neither Kurabayashi nor the approximately 21,000 soldiers who would eventually man this island understood was that they were about to enter what would become the bloodiest battle in United States Marine Corps history, a 36-day ordeal demonstrating both the futility of Japan's defensive doctrine and the extraordinary bravery of men ordered to die for an already doomed cause. The assignment to command Iwo Jima represented both an honor and a death sentence. On June 8, 1944, Kurabayashi had been granted the uncommon privilege of a personal audience with Emperor Hirohito on the eve of his departure. Yet historians like Kumio Kakahashi have suggested that Kurabayashi may have been intentionally selected for what military leadership recognized would be a suicidal mission. The general had made influential enemies within ultranationalist circles, shaping Japanese military policy. As deputy military attaché in the United States from 1928 to 1930, Kurabayashi had traveled widely across America, studied at Harvard University, and observed American industrial strength firsthand. He had written to his wife, "The United States is the last country in the world Japan should fight. Its industrial potential is vast and incredible, and the people are energetic and adaptable." Such realism in an era when Japanese military ideology emphasized spiritual power over material resources had labeled Kurabayashi as a defeatist in the eyes of hardline officers. Despite his doubts about Japan's war, Kurabayashi approached his assignment with characteristic discipline and innovation. He began his inspection of Iwo Jima's defenses and immediately recognized the futility of orthodox Japanese defensive doctrine. The garrison had been digging beach trenches according to standard procedure, defend at the shoreline, oppose every landing, die gloriously on the sand. Kurabayashi ordered this work halted at once. He had studied American amphibious assaults on Tarawa, where Japanese beach fortifications were obliterated by naval gunfire before Marines even reached shore. He had analyzed the catastrophe at Saipan, where feudal Bansai charges had squandered thousands of Japanese lives without significantly slowing American victory. Iwo Jima would be different. Kurabayashi would introduce a radical strategy, defense in depth, based on hardened positions deep underground, designed to withstand the heaviest bombardment and inflict maximum casualties over a prolonged period. Instead of contesting the beaches, Kurabayashi would allow the Americans to come ashore, draw them inland, then annihilate them from fortified positions unreachable by naval gunfire and aerial strikes. He commanded his engineers to begin constructing an intricate underground fortress system using the island's natural caves and volcanic rock. 25% of the entire garrison was assigned to Excavation duty, a massive allocation of manpower that drew immediate criticism from subordinate officers who believed the men should be training for battle rather than digging tunnels. According to his former chief of staff, the general frequently emphasized, America's productive capacities are beyond our imagination. Japan has started a war with a formidable enemy, and we must steel ourselves accordingly. The engineering project that emerged over the ensuing months became one of the most sophisticated fortification efforts of the Pacific War. Mining engineers were dispatched from Japan to design the underground complex, drafting blueprints for tunnels at multiple levels to ensure proper ventilation and lessen the impact of explosions near entrances. By February 1945, Japanese engineers had carved out roughly 18 kilometers of tunnel, linking defensive positions across the island. Soldiers assigned to tunnel duty worked in temperatures ranging from 30 to 50 degrees Celsius as volcanic rock radiated intense heat that transformed underground passages into suffocating furnaces. Men collapsed routinely from heat exhaustion. Fresh water remained critically limited, with supplies dependent on what could be brought by submarine or surface ships. Running the gauntlet of American submarines. The northern slope of Mount Suribachi alone contains several thousand yards of tunnels. The main command bunker, located in the northern highlands near the village of Ka, sat 20 m underground and consisted of multiple chambers connected by 150 m of passageways where Kurabayashi established his war room. The garrison defending Ioma represented a cross-section of Japan's military at this late stage of the war. The Corps fighting force consisted of the 109th Division, approximately 13,000 Army personnel organized into two independent mixed brigades. The 2nd Independent Mixed Brigade under Major General Kato Osuga numbered approximately 5,000 men, while the 145th Infantry Regiment commanded by Colonel Masuwa Ikeda contributed 2,700 soldiers. Naval forces totaled approximately 7,500 men from the 27th Air Flotilla under Rear Admiral Toshinosuke Kikamaru. Unlike veteran formations that had fought in China or early Pacific campaigns, many defenders were recent conscripts with minimal training. Some were middle-aged reservists called up as Japan scraped the bottom of its manpower reserves. Others were support troops and administrative personnel pressed into combat roles as the empire's strategic situation deteriorated. Among the most notable officers was Colonel Baron Takichi Nishi, commander of the 26th Tank Regiment. Born into nobility on July 12, 1902, Nishi had won a gold medal in shoge jumping at the 1932 Los Angeles Olympics, becoming a celebrity in Hollywood circles and befriending stars like Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Fairbanks, and Mary Pickford. His widow later recalled that he had been despondent after Pearl Harbor, knowing that war with America was strategic madness, but feeling bound by duty. On July 18, 1944, while sailing from Busan, Korea to Uema, the transport ship carrying Nishi's regiment was torpedoed by American submarine USS Cobia. All 28 of the regiment's tanks sank to the bottom of the Pacific. Nishi returned to Tokyo to requisition replacements, managing to secure 22 tanks. During this brief visit home, he made a final trip to visit his beloved horse, Uranus, who had carried him to Olympic glory. Through late 1944, defensive preparations intensified despite constant harassment from American aircraft and submarines. The defenders discovered that Uema's black volcanic ash, when mixed with cement, created superior concrete. Pillboxes were constructed with reinforced concrete walls 4 feet thick capable of withstanding direct hits from naval shells. The Japanese installed approximately 300 anti-aircraft guns, 33 naval guns ranging from 4.7 to 6 in, 438 artillery pieces, 69 anti-tank guns, and Nishi's 22 tanks, which were dug into fixed positions and buried up to their turrets to serve as fortified artillery emplacements. Gasoline-powered. Generators allowed radios and lighting to operate underground. Hundreds of hidden artillery and mortar positions were placed across the island. The Japanese defensive preparations transformed every part of Iwo Jima into a potential killing zone, subject to defensive fire from multiple concealed positions. Kurabayashi's defensive philosophy broke fundamentally with Japanese military tradition. He explicitly forbade banzai charges. Such mass frontal assaults had characterized Japanese defensive tactics throughout the Pacific War, with soldiers launching suicidal attacks that fulfilled cultural expectations of honorable death but accomplished nothing militarily. Kurabayashi argued that charging into American guns was suicide without purpose. Instead, every Japanese soldier on Iwo Jima received orders to kill at least 10 Americans before dying. The goal was not victory, which was impossible, but maximum attrition. This strategy created deep divisions within the officer corps. Vice Admiral Sadaiki Matsunaga openly clashed with Kurabayashi over defensive plans, wanting to establish strong positions along beaches and contest the American landing directly. Kurabayashi relieved Matsunaga of command, replacing him with Rear Admiral Ikamaru, who proved more willing to coordinate with Army defensive plans. By December 1944, Kurabayashi established February 11, 1945 as target date for completion of defensive preparations. Despite harassment from American submarines and aircraft, additional personnel continued arriving through January. The final garrison totaled between 21,000 and 23,000 men. However, supply levels remained woefully inadequate. The defenders had ammunition for only 60% of what military doctrine considered necessary for a single division-level engagement. Food supplies were calculated to last 4 months at most. Fresh water remained critically scarce. Approximately 1,500 Japanese troops had been lost when their transport ships were sunk by American submarines en route to the island. Life on Iwo Jima before the invasion was characterized by constant work, insufficient supplies, and growing tension. Soldiers lived in caves and tunnels, sleeping on volcanic rock, breathing sulfur-tainted air. The island earned its name from volcanic gases that permeated everything. There were no trees, no vegetation beyond scrubgrass. The heat was relentless. Men developed heat rash, dysentery, and various tropical diseases. Medical supplies were limited. Poor nutrition and unsanitary conditions took a terrible toll, with many soldiers dying of disease before American forces arrived. Yet, Kurabayashi insisted on sharing the hardships of his men, refusing special privileges. According to former subordinates, General Kurabayashi regularly visited wounded enlisted men in the hospital. Behavior virtually unheard of for an officer of the general staff. When water rations were reduced, Kurabayashi accepted the same limited allocation as the lowest-ranking private. Kurabayashi's letters home during this period revealed a thoughtful man who loved his family, worried about their future, and accepted his own death as necessary sacrifice. To his wife Yoshi, he wrote in November 1944, "You must not expect my survival. The enemy may land on this island soon. Once they do, we must follow the fate of those on Atu and Saipan. Our officers and men know about death very well. I am sorry to end my life here fighting the United States of America, but I want to defend this island as long as possible and to delay the enemy air raids on Tokyo. Watch out for your health and live long. The future of our children will not be easy either. Please take care of them after my death." These words demonstrated that Kurabayashi harbored no illusions about his fate or the battle's outcome. Beginning June 15, 1944, American B-24 and B-25 bombers raided the island for 74 consecutive days, the longest pre-invasion bombardment of the Pacific War. These attacks cratered airfields and destroyed surface structures, but had limited effectiveness against underground fortifications. American intelligence assessments severely underestimated both defensive preparations and garrison strength. Reconnaissance photographs showed cratered airfields and destroyed buildings, leading planners to conclude that months of bombing had significantly degraded Japanese capabilities. Intelligence estimates suggested the garrison numbered perhaps 13,000 to 15,000 troops, well below actual strength. More critically, aerial photographs could not penetrate underground to reveal the extensive tunnel network. February 16, 1945 marked the beginning of the final assault phase. The pre-invasion naval bombardment began with battleships, cruisers, and destroyers unleashing devastating firepower. Major General Harry Schmidt of the Marine Corps had requested 10 days of heavy bombardment, but received only 3 days impaired by weather conditions. The Japanese defenders took shelter in their tunnels, waiting out the storm of steel. On February 17, 12 LCI gunboats moved close to shore to support underwater demolition teams. The Japanese emerged from positions and opened fire with everything available. The gunboats were devastated, with LCI 449 sunk and several others severely damaged, suffering 170 casualties total. But the sacrifice revealed many hidden Japanese positions, allowing battleships Tennessee and Idaho to move within 2,500 yards of shore on February 18 to pulverize specific targets with devastating accuracy. Inside the tunnels, the experience of bombardment tested defenders' endurance and sanity. The mountain itself seemed to shake with each impact. Dust and debris fell constantly from tunnel ceilings. Men prayed, sat in silence, or wrote final letters to families they knew they would never see again. The Americans fired approximately 22,000 shells at Iwo Jima during the pre-invasion bombardment, each one a reminder of industrial might array against them. Yet, Kurabayashi's defensive strategy proved sound. Underground positions survived, largely intact. At 0859 on February 19, 1945, the first wave of Marines from the 4th and 5th Marine Divisions hit the beaches. The amphibious tractors seemed endless, wave after wave approaching shore. Offshore, the support fleet stretched to the horizon. Hundreds of ships representing an assembly of naval power beyond anything the defenders had ever witnessed. Landing craft struggled through heavy surf and steep beaches. Marines jumped from tractors and immediately sank ankle-deep into loose volcanic sand, struggling to move inland. The volcanic ash was soft and loose, causing vehicles to flounder, unable to gain traction. Kurabayashi's orders were explicit. Let them land. Let them pack the beaches. Then open fire with everything. For nearly 30 minutes, Marines advanced with surprisingly light resistance. Then Kurabayashi gave the order. Every artillery piece, every mortar, every machine gun position opened fire simultaneously. The beaches became a killing zone. Marines dove for cover that did not exist. Japanese artillery pre-registered on every sector of the beach, fired with devastating accuracy. Machine gun fire swept approaches to the terrace, marking the edge of the beach. By day's end, approximately 30,000 Marines had landed, establishing a beachhead that stretched the width of the southern end of the island. They had cut Mount Suribachi off from the rest of the island's defenses, but the cost had been tremendous. Over 500 Marines killed and more than 1,800 wounded on the first day alone. That first night, Marines prepared for the massive bonsai charges that had characterized previous Pacific battles. But Kurabayashi's orders forbade such attacks. The night passed with only minor probing attacks, leaving Marines confused but grateful. The battle for Mount Suribachi began in earnest on February 20th. The 28th Marine Regiment started the slow, brutal process of reducing Japanese defenses. Marines advanced yard by yard, using flamethrowers to clear bunkers, explosives to collapse tunnel entrances, grenades to kill defenders in pillboxes. The Japanese fought from prepared positions, falling back through connecting tunnels when positions became untenable, emerging to fight again from new angles. Colonel Kanehiko Atsuchi, commanding the Mount Suribachi garrison of approximately 1,800 men, conducted the defense with skill and determination. By February 23, after 3 days of continuous fighting, a Marine patrol reached Suribachi's summit. They raised a small American flag at 10:20 hours, triggering cheers from Marines across the beachhead. Later that day, a second patrol brought a larger flag to replace the first. Associated Press photographer Joe Rosenthal captured this second flag raising in what would become one of the most iconic images of World War II. But for Japanese defenders remaining in tunnels beneath the mountain, the flag meant battle would continue underground. Isolated groups of soldiers would continue fighting in the Suribachi tunnel complex for weeks after the mountain's surface had been declared secured. The main Japanese defensive positions lay in the northern part of the island where Kurabayashi had concentrated his strength in terrain favoring the defender. The northern highlands consisted of broken ground, ravines, rocky ridges, and countless caves transformed into an engineered killing zone with mutually supporting defensive positions. The Marines gave the northern strong points names reflecting the horror of fighting there. The Meat Grinder, Turkey Knob, Hill 382. Amphitheater, Bloody Gorge. Each represented a complex of fortified positions that had to be reduced through direct assault. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th Marine Divisions attacked these positions simultaneously, advancing slowly against fanatical resistance. The fighting in northern Ioma introduced American forces to the full horror of Kurabayashi's defensive system. Japanese positions that appeared destroyed would come alive with renewed fire hours later as defenders emerged from tunnels to reoccupied bunkers. Marines developed specialized tactics for tunnel warfare, using flamethrowers to clear connected chambers and explosives to collapse tunnel sections. Flamethrower teams became essential despite suffering casualty rates approaching 92%. Marine tank battalions found their M4A3 or 3 flame tanks in constant demand. By battle's end, the 5th Marine Division's flame tanks were expending between 5,000 and 10,000 gallons of napalm daily. As February turned to March, the Japanese defensive position became increasingly desperate. Casualties mounted daily. Food supplies dwindled to starvation rations. Water became so scarce that men suffered from severe dehydration even while fighting. Medical supplies ran out entirely, leaving wounded to suffer without even basic pain relief. Ammunition stocks approached exhaustion for some calibers. Yet the defense continued. Kurabayashi's strategy of maximum attrition was working. American casualties had already exceeded all pre-invasion estimates. The 5-day battle had stretched into its 3rd week with no end in sight. Baron Nishi's tank regiment with tanks destroyed or immobilized fought as infantry from prepared positions in the northern highlands. American forces knew Nishi was on the island. Intelligence officers broadcast appeals for him to surrender, pointing out that the world would regret losing such a celebrated figure. Nishi never responded. He remained with his men, sharing their hardships, maintaining discipline and morale even as the situation became hopeless. On approximately March 22, 1945, Nishi was killed in action. The exact circumstances remain unknown. His body was never identified among thousands of Japanese dead in the northern highlands. Some accounts suggest he committed ritual suicide. Others indicate he died leading troops in combat. Nishi was posthumously promoted to colonel and awarded the Order of the Rising Sun third-class gold rays with neck ribbon. By mid-March, American advances had compressed remaining Japanese forces into an area of less than 1 square mile in the northern tip of the island. Kurabayashi's command structure remained intact, communication lines still functioning through the tunnel network. On March 17, the general sent his final message to Imperial headquarters in Tokyo. The battle is approaching its end. The strength under my command is now about 400. Tanks have invaded our last defense line at various sectors. They are now attacking our last stronghold. We continue to fight. I am sorry indeed we could not have defended the island successfully. We are still fighting. His earlier message on March 16 had been even more poignant. I am very sorry, because I can imagine the scenes of disaster in our empire. However, I comfort myself a little, seeing my officers and men die without regret after struggling in this inch-by-inch battle against an overwhelming enemy with many tanks and being exposed to indescribable bombardments. The Americans declared Iwo Jima secured on March 26, 1945, exactly 36 days after the invasion began. But fighting continued for weeks afterward. Japanese soldiers in sealed cave systems continued resisting, emerging at night to scavenge for food and water. Americans systematically sealed tunnel entrances with explosives, pumped seawater into cave systems, used grenades and flamethrowers to clear underground positions. The last organized resistance ended with Kuribayashi's death, believed to have occurred on March 26 when he led a final attack against American positions. On March 25, 1945, 300 of Kuribayashi's men mounted a final banzai attack against the order that had defined the general's entire defensive strategy. Kuribayashi's body was never found or identified. Rear Admiral Ikemaru also died during this final period. The casualty figures shocked both nations. American forces suffered 26,038 total casualties, including approximately 6,821 deaths. Marine casualties totaled 5,931. Killed in action died of wounds or missing in action and presumed dead. More than twice as many Marines as had been killed in all of World War I. An additional 209 deaths occurred among Navy corpsmen and surgeons assigned to the Marines. Approximately 19,217 Marines were wounded. This represented the only major Pacific battle where American casualties exceeded Japanese casualties, though Japanese combat deaths were 3 times American deaths. For Japan, the cost was even more catastrophic. Of approximately 21,000 defenders, only 1,083 survived the battle. A mere 216 were captured during actual fighting, with the rest emerging from caves and tunnels in weeks and months afterward. 2. Japanese soldiers remained in hiding until January 6, 1949. Nearly 4 years after the battle ended, finally surrendering after years of living in the tunnel system. The strategic value of Iwo Jima justified the terrible cost, though this remained controversial. By war's end, 2,251 B-29 bombers made emergency landings on the island, saving an estimated 24,761 airmen who would otherwise have ditched in the Pacific or crashed attempting to reach the Marianas. The first B-29 to make an emergency landing was Dynamite, which touched down on March 4, 1945, while fighting still raged in the Northern Highlands. P-51 Mustang fighters based on Iwo Jima began escorting bombing raids to Tokyo and other Japanese cities. The island served as a base for air-sea rescue operations, allowing faster response to downed air crews. The Battle of Iwo Jima produced 27 Medals of Honor, more than any other single battle in Marine Corps history, with 13 awarded posthumously. Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz, commenting on the battle, said, "Among the Americans who served on EW Island, uncommon valor was a common virtue." The battle demonstrated that Japanese forces could inflict terrible casualties, even when facing overwhelming American superiority. Kurabayashi's tactics showed that determined defenders in prepared positions could extract a horrific price from attackers. Military planners projected that invasion of the Japanese home islands would produce hundreds of thousands of American casualties if the Japanese employed similar defensive tactics on a larger scale. These projections contributed to the decision to use atomic weapons against Hiroshima and Nagasaki rather than launch Operation Downfall. The planned invasion of Japan. For Japanese families of men who died on Iwo Jima, the battle's aftermath brought only grief without closure. Most of the dead were never recovered or identified. Families received notification of death in battle, but no bodies to bury, no graves to visit. This inability to properly honor the dead carried special significance in Japanese culture, where Buddhist tradition emphasized the importance of proper burial. Even decades after the war, Japanese search teams continued recovering remains from Iwo Jima's caves. The remains of more than 10,000 Japanese soldiers still rest under the island soil. In the immediate post-war years, the Battle of Iwo Jima remained largely forgotten in Japan. The nation was consumed with rebuilding from total defeat, processing the horror of atomic bombing and firebombing that killed hundreds of thousands of civilians. The strategic bombing campaign had killed approximately 900,000 Japanese civilians. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki killed an estimated 200,000 people. In this context, Iwo Jima was simply one more disaster in a year of unprecedented national catastrophe. Decades later, historians and filmmakers began seriously examining the battle from the defenders' perspective. In 1970, Yoshi Kurabayashi represented Japanese families of war dead at a luncheon in Tokyo with American veterans. In a speech, she thanked them for expressions of friendship and received a standing ovation. She later attended both the 1985 and 1995 reunions of honor hosted on the island. The 1985 reunion of honor brought together former enemies as old men, their wartime hatred mellowed by decades of peace. They walked battlefields together, visiting places where they had tried to kill each other. Japanese veterans showed American Marines the tunnel systems they had defended. American veterans explained their tactics for reducing these defenses. The meetings were emotional, marked by tears, embraces, shared prayers for the dead. Veterans spoke of finding peace through reconciliation. Similar reunions continued at 5-year intervals, building bridges between former enemies. The physical island remains largely unchanged since 1945, preserved in its battlecard state. Today, it is officially known by its Japanese name, Iwoto. Civilian access is severely restricted, allowed only for memorial services attended by veterans and families of the fallen. The Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force operates a small naval air facility. The United States Navy occasionally uses the airfield for carrier landing practice, but mostly Iwo Jima remains a memorial to the dead, where thousands of Japanese soldiers remain entombed in sealed caves, where American and Japanese monuments stand side by side. Modern historians examining the battle with access to sources from both sides have reached generally consistent conclusions. Tactically, the battle demonstrated the effectiveness of defense in depth when properly implemented. Kurabayashi's strategy inflicted maximum casualties and prolonged the battle far beyond American expectations, transforming what military planners expected to be a 5-day operation into a 36-day ordeal. Strategically, the island's value as an emergency landing field and fighter base justified its capture, though debate continues whether the cost was proportionate to the benefit. The battle showcased American industrial might and logistical capability while demonstrating Japanese tactical skill, engineering prowess, and the determination of defenders fighting from prepared positions. Cultural memory of Iwo Jima differs markedly between the United States and Japan. In America, the battle holds iconic status, exemplified by Rosenthal's photograph and the Marine Corps War Memorial in Arlington, Virginia. Every Marine learns about Iwo Jima during training. In Japan, awareness remained limited until 2006 when Clint Eastwood's film Letters from Iwo Jima brought renewed attention to the defenders' perspective. The film, shot in Japanese with Japanese actors, attempted to present the battle through Japanese eyes. The film was based on General Kuribayashi's published letters and the book So Sad to Fall In Battle by Kumiko Kakahashi. Tactical innovations developed during the Battle of Iwo Jima influenced military doctrine. For decades, combined arms tactics became standard practice. The importance of specialized weapons for reducing fortifications was recognized. Tunnel warfare techniques would be employed in later conflicts, particularly in Vietnam, where the Viet Cong employed similar underground defensive systems. The battle showed that even overwhelming firepower and numerical superiority could not eliminate the need for infantry to close with and destroy the enemy in fortified positions. General Kuribayashi's letters from Iwo Jima provide unique glimpses into his state of mind as the American invasion approached. His correspondence with his wife Yoshi and children revealed a man who loved his family deeply, accepted his own death as inevitable, and hoped his sacrifice would shield them. In one letter, he expressed the philosophy that sustained him: if our children can live safely for one more day, it would be worth the one more day that we defend this island. This belief sustained Japanese defenders through the hell of battle. Whether the battle truly protected the homeland for any meaningful length of time remains debatable. What cannot be debated is the sincerity of the belief and the determination it created. The Battle of Iwo Jima stands as one of history's most savage confrontations, a 36-day struggle where approximately 27,000 men died or were grievously wounded on an 8-square-mile island. It illustrated the terrible price of war, the courage of individuals caught in circumstances beyond their control, and the possibility of reconciliation even after the most ferocious conflicts. General Kuribayashi, Baron Nishi, Rear Admiral Ikemaro, and thousands of Japanese soldiers whose names history never recorded, fought with remarkable courage for a cause already lost. Following orders they could not refuse, dying for a homeland that would ultimately be saved not by their sacrifice, but by Japan's unconditional surrender 4 months later. The island itself stands as a memorial to all who fought there, its volcanic rock forever tied to one of World War II's bloodiest battles. The tunnels that once sheltered desperate defenders now shelter only memories and the remains of those who never left. The beaches where Marines struggled through volcanic sand are quiet now, disturbed only by occasional veterans or researchers visiting to pay respects. Lieutenant General Tadamaki Kuribayashi died as he had lived, with honor, courage, and unwavering commitment to duty. His body was never recovered, but his legacy endures in the letters he wrote to his family, in the respect accorded him by American Marines who fought against his defensive brilliance, and in the example he set of a commander who shared every hardship with his men. Baron Takechi Nishi, the Olympic champion once celebrated in Hollywood, died fighting Americans he had once called friends, demonstrating the tragedy of war that turns friends into enemies. The 21,000 Japanese soldiers who defended Iwo Jima, most of whom died in the island's volcanic tunnels and caves, fought with extraordinary bravery for a homeland they would never see again.